Love is the most elaborate prison ever constructed by the human mind. It masquerades as freedom while binding you with chains stronger than steel. It promises fulfillment while creating dependency. It offers completion while making you fundamentally incomplete without another person's validation, attention, and approval. True leverage in life comes not from romantic relationships, but from developing what military strategists call asymmetric advantages, capabilities, resources, and positions that give you options that others lack. Building these advantages requires systematic investment in yourself, rather than in romantic pursuits that may or may not produce lasting benefits. The foundation of personal leverage is financial independence, having enough resources that you never need to make decisions based on economic desperation or dependence on others' financial support. The person with substantial savings, diverse income sources, and minimal debt can make authentic choices about work, relationships, and lifestyle without being constrained by immediate economic needs. Financial leverage affects every aspect of your life, including romantic relationships. The financially independent person doesn't stay in unsatisfying relationships because leaving would create economic hardship. They don't tolerate poor treatment from employers, partners, or others because they need their approval for economic security. They can take risks and pursue opportunities that financially dependent people cannot consider. Building financial leverage requires prioritizing wealth accumulation over lifestyle inflation and relationship expenses. Instead of spending money on expensive dates, gifts, and lifestyle signals designed to attract romantic partners, you invest in assets that produce income, skills that increase your earning capacity, and resources that provide options. The second component of personal leverage is skill development, becoming exceptionally good at valuable capabilities that others need and are willing to pay for. Skills create leverage because they make you indispensable in professional contexts and give you the confidence that comes from knowing you can create value regardless of your circumstances. The most valuable skills are those that solve important problems, create meaningful outcomes, and remain relevant across different industries and economic conditions. Technical skills, communication abilities, leadership capabilities, and analytical thinking provide leverage across multiple contexts and create opportunities that are unavailable to people who lack these capabilities. Skill development requires the same time and energy that most people invest in dating, relationship maintenance, and romantic pursuits. The person who spends evenings learning new capabilities instead of going on dates gradually develops advantages that create exponentially better life options. The third element of leverage is network development, building relationships with people who can provide opportunities, insights, and resources that advance your strategic objectives. This is fundamentally different from social relationships based on comfort, familiarity, or romantic potential. Strategic networking focuses on mutual benefit rather than emotional connection. You develop relationships with people who have capabilities you need and to whom you can provide value in return. These relationships are maintained based on continued mutual benefit rather than emotional attachment or romantic attraction. The strategic networker asks, what value can I provide to this person? What value can they provide to me? How can we create outcomes that benefit both of us? This approach builds relationships that actually enhance your capabilities and options rather than just providing emotional satisfaction. Professional mentors, industry colleagues, successful entrepreneurs, skilled professionals, and influential individuals provide more practical value than romantic relationships because they can teach you skills, provide opportunities, and connect you with resources that romantic partners typically cannot offer. The fourth component is what psychologists call emotional self-sufficiency, the ability to generate your own sense of meaning, satisfaction, and motivation without requiring external validation or emotional support. This self-sufficiency is perhaps the most important form of leverage because it eliminates the psychological dependencies that keep most people trapped in unsatisfying circumstances. Emotional self-sufficiency is developed through pursuing goals that genuinely matter to you, rather than goals designed to impress others, engaging in activities that provide intrinsic satisfaction rather than just social approval, and building self-respect through actual achievement rather than through others' opinions about you. The emotionally self-sufficient person doesn't need others to make them feel valuable, interesting, or worthy of respect. They generate these feelings through their own accomplishments and self-development, making them independent of others' emotional availability or approval. Physical leverage includes health, fitness, and personal presentation that create advantages in professional and social contexts. Physical capability provides confidence, energy, and presence that affect how others respond to you and how effectively you can pursue demanding objectives. Maintaining excellent physical condition requires discipline and time investment, but it provides returns across every area of life by enhancing your energy, confidence, and capability to handle challenging situations. Physical strength also provides the resilience necessary for sustained high performance in demanding careers and ambitious projects. Geographic leverage involves positioning yourself in locations that provide maximum opportunities for your specific goals and capabilities. Different cities, regions, and countries offer different advantages for various careers, lifestyles, and objectives. The person who chooses location based on romantic relationships rather than strategic advantage often limits their professional and personal options significantly. Relationship-based geographic decisions frequently result in living in places that don't serve your authentic interests or provide optimal opportunities for your development. Finally, personal leverage includes what philosophers call intellectual independence, the ability to think clearly about complex issues without being influenced by social pressure, emotional manipulation, or popular opinion. Intellectual independence allows you to make decisions based on accurate analysis rather than on what others expect or approve. This independence is developed through reading widely, thinking critically, and forming opinions based on evidence and reasoning rather than on social acceptability or emotional comfort. The intellectually independent person can recognize opportunities that others miss and avoid mistakes that others make due to conventional thinking. Building these forms of leverage requires treating yourself as your most important client, investing in your own development as your primary responsibility, and viewing romantic relationships as potential enhancements to an already strong foundation rather than as solutions to fundamental life challenges. Once you understand that leverage trumps love, you can approach human connections, including romantic ones, from a position of strategic strength rather than emotional neediness. This strategic approach produces better outcomes for everyone involved because it's based on mutual benefit rather than mutual dependency. Strategic connection begins with what negotiation experts call interest analysis, understanding what you actually want from relationships and what others actually want from you. Most people enter relationships with vague hopes for happiness, fulfillment, and connection without clearly defining what specific benefits they're seeking or offering. The strategic person asks, what specific outcomes do I want from this relationship? What value can I provide to this person? What value do they provide to me? How do our authentic interests align or conflict? This clarity prevents the confusion and disappointment that characterize most romantic relationships. Strategic connection also employs what economists call option value thinking, maintaining multiple possibilities rather than investing everything in single relationships. Instead of focusing exclusively on one romantic prospect, you develop multiple connections that could provide different types of value and satisfaction. This diversification reduces the psychological pressure on any single relationship to provide everything you need, making each connection more relaxed and enjoyable. It also provides alternatives if specific relationships don't develop as hoped, eliminating the desperation that makes people cling to unsatisfying connections. The strategic approach includes what psychologists call boundaries maintenance, clearly defining what you will and won't accept in relationships, and consistently enforcing these standards regardless of emotional pressure or romantic attraction. Boundaries protect your leverage by preventing others from exploiting your interest in maintaining connection. Strategic boundaries might include refusing to compromise core goals for relationship maintenance, declining to tolerate disrespectful treatment regardless of someone's attractiveness, and maintaining your individual interests and friendships despite romantic partners' preferences for exclusive attention. These boundaries often create conflict in the short term, but lead to much healthier relationship dynamics in the long term, because they establish mutual respect and prevent the gradual erosion of individual identity that destroys romantic attraction over time. Strategic connection also employs what military strategists call force multiplier identification, recognizing relationships that enhance your capabilities rather than drain them. Instead of seeking relationships that provide emotional comfort, you prioritize connections that make you stronger, more capable, and more effective in pursuing your authentic objectives. A force-multiplying relationship might involve partners who challenge you to grow, who have complementary skills that enhance your projects, who provide access to opportunities or resources that serve your development. These relationships create mutual enhancement rather than mutual dependency. The strategic person also practices what intelligence analysts call compartmentalization, maintaining different types of relationships for different purposes rather than expecting any single relationship to meet all their needs. Professional relationships provide career development. Friendship provides social connection. Romantic relationships provide companionship and intimacy. Mentor relationships provide learning opportunities. This compartmentalization prevents the overloading that occurs when people expect romantic relationships to simultaneously provide friendship, professional support, entertainment, emotional therapy, and life purpose. Each relationship can excel in its specific domain without being burdened with unrealistic expectations. Strategic connection includes what behavioral economists call reciprocity monitoring, tracking whether relationships provide mutual benefit over time rather than just emotional satisfaction. Relationships that consistently require more investment than they provide may feel emotionally meaningful, but actually drain resources that could be better allocated elsewhere. The strategic person periodically evaluates their relationships based on practical outcomes. Does this connection enhance my life or drain my energy? Do I become more capable or less capable through this relationship? Does this person support my authentic goals or require me to compromise them? This evaluation isn't cold or calculating. It's practical assessment of whether relationships actually serve the interests of everyone involved or just create comfortable dysfunction that prevents growth for both parties. Perhaps most importantly, Strategic connection maintains what philosophers call existential independence. The understanding that your core satisfaction and meaning come from your own development and achievements, rather than from relationships. This independence allows you to appreciate connections without being dependent on them for your fundamental well-being. The existentially independent person can enjoy romantic relationships as enhancements to an already satisfying life, rather than as solutions to existential problems. They can be fully present in relationships because they're not desperate to extract meaning, validation, or completion from their partners. This presence and independence paradoxically creates more satisfying romantic connections because both parties can be authentic, rather than performing roles designed to meet the other person's emotional needs. The relationship becomes an expression of mutual appreciation rather than mutual rescue operation. Strategic connection also recognizes what anthropologists call mating market dynamics. The reality that romantic attraction operates according to supply and demand principles similar to economic markets. Understanding these dynamics allows you to position yourself advantageously rather than hoping that emotional connection alone will create lasting relationships. Higher value individuals in the mating market, those with attractive combinations of resources, capabilities, physical attractiveness, and emotional stability, have more options and therefore more leverage in relationship negotiations. Building your value in multiple domains creates more options and better relationship outcomes. The strategic approach doesn't eliminate romance or emotional connection. It provides the foundation that makes authentic romance possible. When you're not desperately seeking relationships to fill voids in your life, you can choose connections based on genuine compatibility and mutual enhancement rather than mutual neediness. This choice-based rather than need-based approach to relationships typically produces much more satisfying outcomes because both parties are engaging from positions of strength rather than weakness, abundance rather than scarcity, genuine interest rather than desperate hope. The ultimate goal of abandoning the mythology of love is not to become isolated or emotionally closed, but to develop such complete self-sufficiency that all your relationships become choices rather than necessities. This self-sufficiency creates a form of freedom that people dependent on romantic validation can never experience. Self-sufficient individuals discover that they can create meaning, satisfaction, and fulfillment through their own activities, achievements, and development without requiring external validation or emotional support. They pursue projects that genuinely interest them, set goals based on their authentic preferences, and measure success by their own standards rather than others' approval. This internal orientation produces what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, drive that comes from genuine interest and personal satisfaction rather than from desire to impress others or gain external rewards. Intrinsically motivated action is more sustainable and ultimately more satisfying than externally motivated behavior because it aligns with your authentic nature. The self-sufficient person can spend extended periods alone without experiencing loneliness because they're engaged with activities and pursuits that provide genuine stimulation and satisfaction. They don't need others' presence to feel engaged with life because they've developed interests and capabilities that create their own excitement and meaning. This capacity for solitary satisfaction is perhaps the most valuable form of leverage because it eliminates the psychological desperation that makes people accept poor treatment, compromise their goals, and remain in unsatisfying relationships. When you're genuinely happy alone, you can afford to be selective about who you allow into your life. Self-sufficiency also creates what philosophers call outcome independence. caring about results while remaining emotionally unattached to specific outcomes. You can prefer to have someone in your life while knowing you'll be fine if they leave. You can work toward relationship goals while accepting whatever outcomes develop without emotional devastation. This outcome independence makes you more attractive to others because they sense that you're engaging with them from choice rather than need, strength rather than weakness, genuine interest rather than desperation. People are naturally drawn to those who don't need them while avoiding those who seem needy or dependent. The liberation of self-sufficiency extends to professional and social contexts as well. The self-sufficient person doesn't need job security from employers who might exploit their desperation, social approval from groups that might limit their authentic expression, or financial support from family members who might use their dependency as control mechanism. This professional independence allows for more authentic career development because you can pursue opportunities based on their merit rather than on your need for security. You can take calculated risks that dependent people cannot afford, negotiate from positions of strength rather than desperation, and leave situations that don't serve your development. Social self-sufficiency enables more authentic relationships across all domains because you're not modifying your behavior to maintain others' approval. You can express genuine opinions, pursue authentic interests, and maintain personal boundaries without fear that being authentic will result in isolation. Financial self-sufficiency provides perhaps the most practical form of leverage because it eliminates economic desperation from decision-making. The financially independent person can make choices based on their authentic preferences rather than economic necessity, can take risks that economically dependent people cannot consider, and can leave situations that don't serve their interests. The combination of emotional, social, professional, and financial self-sufficiency creates what we might call existential sovereignty, complete freedom to make decisions based on your authentic assessment of what serves your development rather than on what maintains others' approval or support. This sovereignty doesn't make you antisocial or isolated. It makes you genuinely available for authentic connections because you're engaging from strength rather than need. You can appreciate others without depending on them, contribute to relationships without losing yourself, and maintain connections without compromising your individual development. Perhaps most importantly, self-sufficiency reveals that the satisfaction and completion that people seek through romantic relationships has been available through individual development all along. The meaning you thought would come from finding your soulmate comes from pursuing your authentic goals. The validation you sought from romantic partners comes from developing genuine capabilities. The completion you hope to find through love comes from becoming fully yourself through your own efforts and choices. This recognition transforms your entire approach to life, from seeking external solutions to internal challenges, to recognizing that internal development is the solution to every challenge you face. Instead of asking, "How can I find someone to make me happy?" you ask, "How can I create a life so engaging and meaningful that happiness becomes my natural state?" The self-sufficient person doesn't reject love or human connection. They approach both from a position of abundance rather than scarcity, choice rather than need, strength rather than weakness. This approach typically produces better relationships because it attracts people who are also operating from strength and genuine choice rather than from desperation and emotional dependency. The ultimate irony of abandoning the need for love is that it often makes genuine love possible for the first time. When you're complete within yourself, you can appreciate others for who they are rather than for what they provide. When you're not seeking completion through relationships, you can enjoy connections without the pressure and expectations that destroy romantic satisfaction. Self-sufficiency is not the end of human connection, but the beginning of authentic connection based on mutual appreciation rather than mutual neediness, shared growth rather than shared limitations, chosen enhancement rather than desperate rescue. The choice before you is absolute and irreversible. You can continue pursuing the mythology of romantic love, spending your precious time and energy seeking completion through others while remaining fundamentally incomplete within yourself. You can keep believing that the right relationship will solve your existential problems while avoiding the work of building genuine self-sufficiency and personal power. Or you can embrace the path of leverage, developing such complete individual capability and satisfaction that all relationships become enhancements to an already fulfilling existence, rather than desperate attempts to fill internal voids. If you choose dependency, understand what you're accepting. You're choosing to remain vulnerable to others' moods, decisions, and availability for your basic emotional stability. You're accepting that your happiness will rise and fall based on whether others provide the validation and attention you crave. You're committing to a lifetime of seeking externally what can only be found internally. You'll spend your most productive years focused on attracting and maintaining romantic relationships, while others focus those same years on building capabilities, resources, and experiences that create genuine power and freedom. You'll make major life decisions based on romantic considerations rather than strategic analysis of what would serve your authentic development. But if you choose sovereignty, if you decide to develop complete self-sufficiency and build genuine leverage in your life, you're accepting something far more challenging and infinitely more rewarding. You're choosing to become someone who generates their own meaning, satisfaction, and sense of completion through individual development and achievement. You're embracing the responsibility of creating a life so engaging and purposeful that you don't need others to make it feel worthwhile. You're committing to developing capabilities, resources, and experiences that provide genuine security and satisfaction rather than depending on others to provide these feelings for you. This choice will require abandoning the comfortable fantasy that someone else can solve your fundamental life challenges. It demands that you develop genuine capabilities rather than just becoming skilled at attracting others who possess capabilities. It requires building actual value rather than just becoming attractive to others who have value. The person who chooses leverage over love doesn't become cold or isolated. They become authentically powerful and genuinely attractive to others who also understand the difference between strength and neediness, between choice and desperation, between enhancement and dependency. You don't need love. You never needed love. What you need is the courage to become so complete within yourself that love becomes a choice rather than a necessity, an enhancement rather than a requirement, a celebration rather than a rescue operation. What you need is leverage, the power to create the life you want without requiring anyone's permission, participation, or approval. The capability to generate your own satisfaction, meaning, and purpose through your own efforts and development. What you need is the understanding that every moment you spend seeking completion through others is a moment stolen from developing the self-sufficiency that would make completion unnecessary and authentic connection possible. You don't need love. You need leverage. The choice and the power to make it is entirely yours. You have now seen through the greatest deception ever perpetrated on human consciousness, the belief that you need another person's love to be complete, fulfilled, and genuinely happy. You understand that this need is manufactured dependency, designed to keep you weak, manageable, and focused on external validation rather than internal development. The most powerful position in any relationship, romantic or otherwise, is complete indifference to whether the relationship continues. This indifference is not cruelty or callousness. It's strategic positioning that preserves your freedom to make decisions based on your authentic interests rather than on fear of losing someone's approval or presence. Strategic indifference operates on a simple principle. The person who needs the relationship less controls the relationship more. When you genuinely don't need someone's love, validation, or presence to feel complete and satisfied, you can engage with them from a position of strength rather than need. You can be authentic rather than accommodating, selective rather than desperate, strategic rather than reactive. This positioning fundamentally changes relationship dynamics because it eliminates the power imbalances that create dysfunction in most romantic connections. You don't compromise your goals to maintain someone's interest because you're not dependent on their interest for your well-being. You don't tolerate poor treatment to avoid loneliness because you're not afraid of being alone. The strategically indifferent person can walk away from any relationship at any time without experiencing the devastation that keeps most people trapped in unsatisfying dynamics. This freedom to leave creates the leverage necessary for healthy relationship dynamics, or reveals that the relationship wasn't worth maintaining in the first place. Consider how strategic indifference affects dating and attraction. When you genuinely don't need someone's approval or attention, you can be completely authentic in your interactions with them. You can express your real opinions, pursue your actual interests, and maintain your genuine personality without modifying yourself to increase your chances of romantic success. This authenticity is paradoxically more attractive than the accommodating behavior that people typically employ to win romantic interest. Others sense when you're complete and self-sufficient, and this completeness creates attraction that neediness and validation-seeking behavior cannot generate. The strategically indifferent person also avoids the desperate behaviors that repel high-quality potential partners. They don't pursue people who show minimal interest, don't tolerate disrespectful treatment, and don't invest emotional energy in relationships that aren't reciprocal. This selectivity naturally filters for people who can appreciate their strength rather than exploit their neediness. In established relationships, strategic indifference prevents the gradual erosion of respect and attraction that occurs when one person becomes emotionally dependent on the other. The dependent person slowly loses their individual identity and becomes an extension of their partner's preferences and needs, making them less interesting and attractive over time. The strategically indifferent person maintains their individual development, interests, and goals regardless of their relationship status. They continue pursuing their authentic objectives, whether their partner supports those objectives or not. This independence keeps them interesting and prevents the stagnation that kills long-term romantic attraction. Strategic indifference also enables what negotiation experts call principled decision-making in relationships. Instead of making choices based on fear of conflict or desire to please, you make decisions based on your authentic assessment of what serves the relationship's genuine health and your own development. This might mean ending relationships that aren't working, despite the emotional pain involved. It might mean refusing to compromise on important goals to accommodate a partner's preferences. It might mean choosing individual growth over relationship comfort when the two conflict. These principled decisions often strengthen relationships by eliminating dysfunction and maintaining mutual respect, but they require the strength that comes from knowing you'll be fine whether the relationship survives the difficult conversations or not. The development of strategic indifference requires what psychologists call outcome independence, caring about results while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. You can prefer to have someone in your life while accepting that you don't need them in your life. You can enjoy romantic connection while maintaining your capacity for satisfaction without romantic connection. This outcome independence is developed through building what we might call lifestyle sufficiency, creating a life so engaging, meaningful, and satisfying on its own that romantic relationships become enhancements rather than necessities. Your career, hobbies, friendships, personal interests, and individual goals provide enough stimulation and satisfaction that you don't rely on romantic relationships to fill voids in your life experience. Lifestyle sufficiency requires investing the time and energy that most people put into romantic pursuits, into developing capabilities, interests, and resources that create genuine satisfaction. Instead of spending evenings on dates and weekends on relationship activities, you spend that time building skills, pursuing goals, and creating experiences that enhance your individual development. This investment in individual development typically produces better long-term results than investment in romantic relationships because individual capabilities compound over time, while romantic relationships often consume resources without building your long-term capacity for satisfaction. Success. The person who has achieved lifestyle sufficiency becomes what relationship experts call a challenge rather than a catch. They're not trying to catch someone to complete their life. They're so engaged with their own development that others must prove their value to be included in an already satisfying existence. This challenging position attracts higher quality people who are looking for enhancement rather than completion, who have something valuable to offer rather than just needs to be met, who can contribute to mutual growth rather than just seeking emotional support and validation. Strategic indifference ultimately creates the leverage that the relationship mythology promises but never delivers. The power to create satisfying connections based on choice rather than need, strength rather than desperation, mutual benefit rather than emotional dependency. The mythology of romantic love is not a natural human drive, but a sophisticated control system designed to create predictable, manageable behavior patterns. This system works by convincing you that your happiness, worth, and completion depend on finding and maintaining connection with another person who will provide the validation and meaning that you cannot generate internally. Watch how the love mythology operates in your daily experience. You measure your day's success partly by whether you received attention from someone you're attracted to. You evaluate your worth based on whether others find you desirable. You make major life decisions considering how they will affect your ability to attract or maintain romantic relationships. You spend enormous amounts of time, energy, and money on appearance, social activities, and relationship maintenance, resources that could be directed toward developing capabilities that would give you genuine power over your circumstances. Instead of building skills that create independence, you focus on building attractiveness that creates dependency on others' approval. The romantic mythology ensures that you never develop complete self-sufficiency, because complete self-sufficiency would eliminate your need for the validation that romantic relationships provide. The person who derives meaning, satisfaction, and identity from their own capabilities and achievements doesn't need someone else to make them feel valuable. This creates what psychologists call manufactured scarcity, the artificial creation of needs that don't actually exist. You don't naturally need another person to feel complete, worthy, or happy. These needs are created by cultural programming that teaches you to associate your emotional states with others' responses to you, rather than with your own accomplishments and self-development. Consider how this manufactured dependency affects your behavior patterns. You modify your authentic preferences to match those of people you want to attract. You suppress aspects of your personality that might create conflict in relationships. You make career and lifestyle choices based partly on how they will affect your romantic prospects, rather than purely on how they serve your authentic development. The person seeking love spends years learning to be what others want, rather than developing who they authentically are. They become skilled at reading others' desires and adapting to meet those desires while never discovering their own genuine preferences and capabilities. This adaptive behavior creates what we might call authentic self-atrophy, the gradual weakening of your genuine personality through disuse. The more you focus on being attractive to others, the less you develop the internal resources that would make you independently strong and satisfied. The romantic dependency system also operates through what researchers call intermittent reinforcement, the most psychologically addictive reward schedule ever discovered. Romantic relationships provide unpredictable patterns of validation and withdrawal that create psychological addiction to the relationship dynamic itself. When someone you're attracted to gives you attention, your brain releases dopamine, creating genuine biochemical addiction to their approval. When they withdraw attention, you experience withdrawal symptoms that motivate increasingly desperate attempts to regain their interest. This cycle creates psychological dependency that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with addiction to neurochemical rewards. The intermittent reinforcement pattern explains why people become obsessed with relationships that provide minimal actual satisfaction. They're not pursuing happiness, they're pursuing their next dopamine fix from romantic validation. They become addicted to the pursuit itself rather than achieving any meaningful outcome from their relationships. The mythology of love also creates what economists call opportunity cost blindness, the inability to see what you're giving up by investing so heavily in romantic pursuits. Every hour spent on dating, relationship maintenance, and romantic drama is an hour not spent developing skills that would give you genuine power over your life circumstances. Every dollar spent on appearance, entertainment, and relationship activities is a dollar not invested in building capabilities or resources that would create actual security and freedom. Every mental cycle devoted to analyzing relationship dynamics is a mental cycle not used for strategic thinking about your authentic goals and interests. The person focused on finding love often spends decades of their prime developmental years pursuing relationship outcomes, while their peers who focus on building capabilities gradually accumulate advantages in wealth, skills, and influence that create exponentially better life options. Perhaps most destructively, the romantic mythology prevents you from developing what philosophers call existential self-sufficiency, the ability to find meaning and satisfaction in your own existence without requiring external validation. This self-sufficiency is the foundation of all genuine power and freedom, but it cannot be developed while you're psychologically dependent on others' approval for your sense of worth. The person who has never learned to be genuinely happy alone will never be genuinely powerful in relationships, because they will always be negotiating from a position of need rather than strength. They will accept poor treatment rather than risk loneliness, compromise their authentic goals rather than risk rejection, and remain trapped in unsatisfying dynamics rather than risk being alone. This creates what we might call relationship settling, accepting whatever romantic connection is available, rather than developing the independence that would enable you to wait for and attract relationships that actually enhance your life rather than simply filling the void created by your inability to be complete without external validation. Tonight, we demolish the greatest lie ever sold to humanity: that love is necessary for a meaningful life, that romantic connection is the path to happiness, that finding your soulmate will somehow complete the incomplete parts of your existence. This mythology has destroyed more potential, wasted more time, and created more suffering than any war, plague, or natural disaster in human history. You don't need love. You never needed love. What you need, what you've always needed, is leverage. The power to create the life you want without requiring another person's permission, participation, or approval. The capacity to generate your own meaning, satisfaction, and sense of completion without depending on someone else's emotional availability. Over the next hour, we will systematically expose how the mythology of love keeps you weak, dependent, and trapped in cycles of seeking external validation that will never provide the security and satisfaction you're desperately pursuing. You will discover why the most powerful, successful, and ultimately fulfilled people throughout history understood that leverage trumps love every time. By the end of this exploration, you will see that romantic love is not the answer to life's fundamental questions, but a distraction from developing the capabilities and resources that would actually solve your problems and create the experiences you desire.